I'm actually super excited about this video. I've been thinking about this a lot. There are so many coding agents out there, and each of us has a different budget, a different concern for how we think about data. And I just want to jump into from free to $300 a month. What would I probably start with if I was under those budget constraints? Now, to set some ground rules here, I do think no matter what tier you're in, it is so important to try to have more than one model for variety. And that may not mean you can get the best state of the art model, but I do think you do need more than one model. And I know a lot of people may disagree with this, but I love putting models against each other. I love talking to them and having different assessments. And then me, especially at the lower tiers, being the reasoning version of the model, like putting all the pieces together to figure out what we actually need to do. Now, the other objective is I will have ideally used any of the tools here at least for a few days. There is some exceptions to that. I'll call that out, but for the most part, I have used each of these fairly extensively. There will be some usage-based recommendations, but those are going to be minimal, especially at the lower base one. What that means is paying for an API, and I think at the higher tiers, you can set aside some budget for that. The final thing is you should test for your code base. Depending on the tool you're using, you may find certain tools just work better with the technology you're working with. Larger code bases are going to require something very different for grepping or looking through the file structure than potentially, a smaller, 200 to 300 file code base. So just try it out. All right, let's jump into this. And I think this is going to be very interesting because I'm just going to scroll through the list of things that I've kind of analyzed here. So we've got AMP-free, Windsurf. There's GLM coding plan, which I'll talk a little bit more about because that will be included. Claude Code, OpenAI, which is Codex, Cursor, Augment Code, Kira, Warp Dev, Cerebrus Code, GitHub Copilot. There are free models in OpenRouter at various times, whether it's like stealth models or whatnot. Shoots API, I think they're an incredible deal. We've got like some more information on Shoots here. We've got Quinn Code Free and Tray. Now there's probably more. You're probably thinking, hey, what about this or what about that? These are the ones that I'm going to focus on today, and there are always going to be more that I can personally test out and try out. So a couple things that I do want to call out before I jump into it. I actually really love Cursor. Their IDE has actually come a long way. I've been very critical of them in the past. Their plan mode I think is great. My biggest critique of them is I really can't tell how much I get with that $20 plan. Now, that is also true of some of the other ones, but they're a little bit more transparent than what I would say Cursor is. Cursor, like if you just read here, extended limits on agents, unlimited tab completions, background agents, maximum context windows. At some nebulous time, pricing kicks in, and it does notify you in the IDE that that's happening. I did talk to, actually I posted something on X. Someone from Cursor replied to me and said they are working on that. This would actually probably be recommended by me simply by how good their plan mode is if they were to change this. So anyway, let's jump into the free tier. On the free tier, you are 100% are going to have to be okay with data sharing. Now, the one exception here that I just kind of want to throw out is AMP free. I have not had a chance to use this substantially, but I have used AMP substantially. And I do find it to be a very good, good harness. Like it's a good agent. What AMP-free is using, to my knowledge, and based on what they put on X, they are using the Grok Code Fast model under the hood, which is a competent model. So you are not getting a Claude Sonnet 4.5. You are not getting a GPT-5 Codex. You are getting Grok Code Fast. So you have this. This would be, you're using the Grok Code Fast. Now, the issue is they could change that model in the future, and you may or may not know that. So keep that in mind because they do not have a model selector. The other one that I would actually say is Quinn Code Free is absolutely a amazing deal. You get like 2,000 requests a day. I think it's a phenomenal, it's such a good thing. It can't be there forever. It won't be there forever. So just take advantage of that. And of course, the final thing I would say is that you do have access to free models. You should take advantage of that because this would be the way that you can use other agents like RuCode, like OpenCode, like Klein. You can use other agents with these free models just to get a good feeling for how things work. So that's the free tier. You have a lot more options than I would have anticipated if I were to do this video a month ago. but it is actually really good. Now, on the $10 a month plan, there's two approaches to this. So I'm going to start it off with probably the simplest. You have Tray. For $10 a month, you get 600 fast requests and unlimited slow requests. This is a dying pricing model. This will not be here for much longer, in my personal opinion. But as of right now, the recording of this is October 20th, 2025. This is an incredible deal. So at $10 a month, you could get a solid selection of models, a pretty good agent, not the best agent, but a pretty good agent. It's in its own IDE. So you get the model variety, and you have a fixed price, and you get decent usage. And they say unlimited slow requests. You get queued up. So theoretically, while I have never hit the slow request, I have never ran it to the point where that's happening, but I am paying a subscription price to Tray. You know, it theoretically, you could use this for a substantial amount. Now, there is another approach that I would recommend. You could think about this from your own perspective. So we have this GLM coding light plan. Now, if we go and grab the GLM coding light plan, I like this a lot. So this would be another option here. I'm gonna move these over as I go. And I'm gonna put the final price. So this is $6 a month here. Then we have an extra $4 left over, and there is a Shoots API plan, which if we take a look, there's a $3 per month plan where you get 300 requests per day. This is actually a phenomenal deal because you get a lot of different models to choose from. And because of that, you can use it in a bunch of different agents. So in my mind, there are really two options here. You could do something like Tray, maybe GitHub Copilot, but GitHub Copilot to me feels a little bit more nebulous on how many requests you get, but leave that up to you. Tray, GitHub Copilot, or go down the API route of GLM Coding Plan, C.AI, and Shoots API. Arguably, if you're looking for the best quality, Tray is going to be what you're going to do here because you are getting access to the better models, the Sonnet 4.5, etc. Now, I'm going to move these over. So at $30 a month, this is where we start getting into a little bit more serious coding. Like this might be you're starting a company, or you're a solopreneur, or you're trying to do something where you care a little bit about data share, but not really yet because you're keeping the price so low. What we have here is we have Windsurf. Now, I struggle with this because I'm not a big fan of having to install IDs. Even though I did recommend that with Tray, I think that's kind of the option that you get here, or GitHub Copilot. But with Windsurf at $15 a month, you get an unlimited amount of Suite 1 models currently. They also typically have other models in there that don't use credits, but they give you the 500 prompt credits, which remember, the prompt credits are you typing a message in. Again, this is a dying breed. We saw Augment Code moving away from this. So I don't imagine this will be around forever. And there'll be another video we'll need to do in the future as this kind of like goes away. So again, I think there are probably two options here from the approach of $30 a month. So Windsurf, I think, is great. And then if you think about it, you could actually bring in these two particular API plans to kind of fill in the gaps and give you the access to the different models that you want. Now, a whole nother approach would be, I don't want an IDE. I want to like use all this in VS Code. And in that case, what I would do is I would grab Claude Code for $20 because I think that is amazing. Now, the other option here, honestly, is we could use OpenAI or Codex for $20. So I think that's a real option here. So, you know, we can kind of think about it this way. You figure out which one you like the most between Claude and OpenAI. Personally, for me, I'm torn on this because I think OpenAI is probably better right now for limits. So let's just play around these two. So we're going to actually have three scenarios here. So we have $10 on each of those. Now, where I would actually fall in this particular place, again, we're going to be working in VS Code. We can't afford both of them yet. So what I would do is I would actually go and grab GitHub Copilot, the $10 a month plan, because again, I want to be in VS Code. I don't want to deal with having to go into a new IDE. So now for this, I get my $20 a month Claude Code plan. I fill in the gaps with my GitHub Copilot. Same thing here. I could do OpenAI or fill in my gaps with GitHub Copilot. And for you, it's just personal preference. Some people like Claude better. Some people like OpenAI better. I think they're both good now. I think, like I said, I think OpenAI is better at coding. Their limits are better now. So based on what I would know now, I would it's so tough for me. I could go back and forth. I would probably, man, I tell you, I would probably go with the OpenAI solution and then use the Sonnet one as part of GitHub Copilot. But I don't know. I could see an argument for either way. Let's just go ahead and lock in. I would say OpenAI and the GitHub Copilot there. Now, let's do the $60 a month. This is one where a lot of people originally were on like Augment Code, which has greatly changed its pricing model. So at $60 a month, you get 130,000 credits. Now, because of the way they've changed their credit usage, if just for the sake of math, let's say 1,000 credits per message, it's probably going to be between like 500 and 1,000. So we're looking at between 130 prompt messages and 260 prompt messages. Unfortunately, that just is not enough if you're coding at that level and you want the fixed price. I would say the same thing's kind of true for Kiro. Now, Warp, on the other hand, I think is actually an interesting one to consider. Because if you were to go and combine Warp Dev and you were to combine, let's say, OpenAI for $20 a month, you end up in a pretty interesting scenario where you've got a pretty powerful agent in warp.dev and you have a really good agent in OpenAI with Codex. Again, I could say the argument could be that you would also want potentially to basically have Claude here. But remember, warp.dev does an amazing job with Claude Sonnet 4.5. Like, this is basically replacing Claude Code, so I don't think you need that. I would just say the OpenAI stuff right now, because of the limits and stuff it has, I'd say it's slightly better. But there are other options here, because you may be at the $60 a month plan and you're like, man, I really want to be able to use the API. So you could actually come in and go down to Shoots and grab one of the $20 a month plans. That is an incredible deal because you get a lot of model variety here. So another option here would be you could use warp.dev and you could grab the $20 a month Shoots API plan, and you've got another $60 a month, like really solid amount of usage. And you can bring in other tools, which I kind of like, honestly. So here you're locked into Warp and OpenAI. Here you're locked into Warp, and then you use the Shoots API and root code, open code, wherever you want. It allows you to test different models, and you get a decent amount of requests with it. So yeah, $60 a month plan. I also think there's an argument to potentially be made that you could include something like an Augment Code. But again, it seems so limiting. Some people I could see even recommending like putting Windsurf in that tier. I tend to think like personally, I'm not a big fan of like having to install other IDEs. I would like to stay in VS Code. So that's my personal bias here. Now we start getting really interesting at the $100 a month part, because to me, this is where I think every engineer can actually get everything they need. And what I would start with is each of the $20 a month plans. So I would do the Claude Code. I would do the OpenAI. That puts us at $40 now. And this is an incredible amount of usage just in these two. I'm going to be honest with you. If you're not doing anything wild, you can do a ton with just this currently. But what should we add on to it? Because I've gone back and forth in my head quite a few times. Again, keeping like my perspective in the realm of I want to be able to do most of this in VS Code without having to install another IDE. And then if you did want to install another IDE, like there are options there, like with Windsurf and Cursor and Tray. But I have actually really come to love Warp Dev. So with OpenAI, Claude, and Warp Dev, that's puts you at $80. Then what I would most likely do is I would grab either a combination of the Shoots API, and maybe I would just do the $10 one here, or whatever that mid tier was. Let's go check it real quick. I'm pretty sure it was a $10 one. Yep, $10 Shoots one. You get a reasonable amount of models there, or requests there. Then I would go into the GLM coding plan, Z.AI. I know this sounds weird, but I actually really am a big fan of GLM.AI. And think about what this gives you here. as long as you watch what you're using, you've got amazing usage on OpenAI, amazing usage on Claude. I shouldn't say amazing on Claude. I think Claudes are kind of but it's decent usage. Warp.dev for $40, you can do a lot with that. You can fill in the cracks of what when you hit your limits on OpenAI and Claude Code, fill it in with Warp.dev. Then you can test other agents. So you can get different feedback. You can find an agent you like, hey, I want to use OpenCode because I really like the way they do a particular thing, and I'm going to use GLM 4.6 for this thing. So you get all of that variety there. It becomes incredibly, incredibly powerful. Now, this is where I could see people getting a little bit contentious because I think there's one option here is literally just paying $200 a month at the $200 budget. And I do think you can pretty much do everything you want at that tier. I personally have never hit any limits when I was on the $200 a month plan. That may have changed now. I can't, just to be very clear, I canceled that at the beginning of this month. So I haven't been on the $200 a month plan for a while now, trying to lower my expenditure. Or the other thing that I would see you doing is you go for the $100 a month Claude Code plan, because here you're getting locked into just OpenAI. You don't get that model variety unless you pair it with some of the free stuff. But you could do Claude for $100. You could do OpenAI for $20. And this is exactly what I'm on now. And I found this to be incredible because I can stay on the $100 a month plan for all the grunt work. I can be on OpenAI for all the, I want to do some deep research. I want to do some GPT-5 high stuff. I think this is just a really good place to actually be. And for $120 a month, you get an incredible amount of usage, and you probably don't need more than that. But it is fun to just add in these little cheap API plans because I do like testing different models. If I was on a hard $200 a month budget, this would put me at $136, and I would consider upgrading this. And then what I would probably do is I would allocate the rest for API usage. And I talked about not using that very often, but I would. But let's say you didn't and you wanted to have something that you could use that had a fixed pricing to it that you think might be beneficial for what you're doing. This is where I would actually add in Cursor. And I'm doing this as well, simply because I've found that the Cursor $20 a month plan, even though the pricing is very nebulous, I really like their plan mode currently. And I find the way that they present it, the questions they ask you, all of that stuff is just so good that I think it's probably, that alone is probably worth $20 to me. Then I could take that plan and execute it in Claude Code. I know that might be wild. And just keep using it until it tells you that you need to start paying, and then you burn all your $20 credits there. Now, we don't even need to hit the full 200 here, but this puts you within that range. You could trickle in some other things, like I said, API usage on top of it. Now, at the $300 a month plan, I'm going to get rid of this because I think there's a couple different ways. One simple way, in my mind, is simply we would just do OpenAI at $200 and Claude Code at $100. This is probably a dream right here. Now, it does prevent you from using some of the open source models, and you don't get access to what I would say is GLM 4.6, and which, again, I don't think GLM 4.6 is as good as Sonnet 4.5. So if you're choosing, you're going to choose GPT-5 or Sonnet 4.5, but it is great to have that design perspective or these different feedback on things. So at $300 a month, you could do that. The other thing you could do is you could actually go a whole different route where you're all right, I'm going to do Claude at $100. But what I want to do is I actually want to go a little bit heavier in warp.dev. Because I do think warp.dev is still a pretty good value. You do burn credits quickly, but this $40 a month plan, I think it's really nice to have. And depending on how you code, you could burn your credits too fast on it. Just watch it and use the warp.dev to be your different model. So use warp.dev to not run your Sonnet 4.5 models, but to run your GPT-5 codex models, to run your Gemini 2.5 models if you're still using that. Use this to run other models and use this to actually do the coding on it. And it puts you in a really good spot where now you've got $160 left to even be able to invest in something even more substantial. And in my mind, this is where I start thinking a little bit about Cerebrus code, because as much as it's kind of tough for me because Quinn 3 coder is still good, but the speed of Cerebrus is what makes this awesome. And I really love having something that I can run in other agents. Well, when I'm locked in here, I'm locked into Claude Code, and I'm locked into Codex CLI or extension. Here, I'm locked into Claude Code, and I'm locked into Warp Dev. I really like having something I can run in other agents to test it out. Cerebrus Code lets me do that, which I really, really like. And then I would also just go ahead and add in the shoots.api. I would increase this the price of this up to the $20 a month, and I would probably increase the price of this one up. I think I'm trying to remember what it was because I think it's like $12 a month. Let's go take a look at that pricing there. I'm trying to remember exactly. It's $15 a month here. Actually $30 a month for the Pro one, and you get it's just such a good amount of usage there that I think it's worth considering here. So it's $15 a month there, and actually it goes up to 30 after the first month. So let's just put that in at 30. So this gives you two really good agents with fixed prices. You just got to watch your usage on both of them. You get Cerebrus code, so you can fill in with Quinn 3 coder where you need to. That puts you at $190. Add another 20 for the Shoots API, and then you end up with 210, and you add another 30, it's at 240, and then you fill in that last 60 with whatever API usage that you actually want to use. Again, though, if it was me, and this is actually where I'm at today, I think you could do everything you need to for $100 a month, but I think the $200 a month piece is the sweet spot, which is why I think OpenAI needs to release one that's between the $20 and the $200 a month plan. I love where I'm at now, though, which is like my core expenses beyond like testing evals and stuff like this. This is what I kind of consider my kind of core stack recently. This is probably going to change a month from now. But Claude Code, I'm still in the $100 a month plan. I have debated canceling that, but I have learned that their plan mode has gotten a lot better. It's just you have to talk to 4.5 differently now. It doesn't do a lot of its self-context priming. You actually need to work through plan mode more, even for simple things. OpenAI's codex with GPT-5 codex is just great. I love having access to the Shoots API. I love having access to the GLM API. And Cursor's plan mode has just been phenomenal to me. And then this would give me a little bit of budget to go in and out of other agents that I actually want to try. So unfortunately, like our options for fixed price agents is actually diminishing pretty heavily. The two that I would say that you, if you're on the lower end, pay attention to Windsurf, pay attention to Trey. I don't imagine them lasting much longer. I bet you Windsurf is losing money on this $15 a month plan, and I bet you anything that Trey is losing money on their $10 a month plan, because that is just a ridiculous price. Even if they are nerfing the context or whatever, take advantage of those while you can, because I don't think they're going to be around forever. Anyway, I would love to know your thoughts on this. I know this is kind of wild, bunch of things that I threw at you here, but hopefully it's been helpful in some way. Anyway, leave your comments below. I would love to get your feedback on where you agree or disagree. Again, this is my perspective, and I always love hearing other people's perspectives because, I only have so much time to be able to go through and test all this stuff. And if anyone knows of other API coding plans, let me know. I think I only know of the 3 Shoots API, GLM, and then the Cerebrus code. And I will say, just taking a look at their data privacy stuff, read through a lot of that. They, for example, like Shoot says they do not sell, trade, or otherwise transfer your personal information. So I'm trying to figure out like what they can actually do with it. It's tough. So like the whole data side of it, it's hard for me to grok or put my head around like what they're actually doing with it at any particular time. Anyway, I hope you guys have an amazing day. Thank you guys so much. Peace out.